We're going to get a handful of these this offseason, but they are interesting to me. There's a couple of times over the last few years where I've thought these were made up. For example, last year we got one of these anonymous coaches talk about teams thing, and the coach very clearly was talking about John Rice Plumlee.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
Said he can run a little, but he's not much of a thrower.
Yeah.
It's like, he's supposed to be talking about Corral.
That is not who's playing quarterback for Ole Miss in 2021. So sometimes I feel like these are made up, but, we'll see what you think. This is Lindy's Magazine. You guys know Lindy's. They've been doing a college football preview magazine forever, and they talk to anonymous SEC coaches, assistants, staff members, whatever, and they get quotes about every school in the league. We'll start with Mississippi State. Here is, quote, anonymous SEC coach on Mike Leach, or more specifically, Mississippi State. Quote, Mike Leach is an oddball, but he's got that quarterback back. He's got to have a better plan against drop 8 teams. That's where he really struggles because he doesn't have a running attack. If he would incorporate the run game, it would help his passing attack. Defense is solid, but it's not like some of their great defenses of the past. What do you think?
A lot of truth there. A lot of truth to what he said there. I think last year he did show that he has a better plan against that drop 8 attack. Will Rogers threw for 4,800 yards last season. I think they got that figured out as best they can. And he's right. If they would run the ball more, I think it would go a long way in helping the offense. And defensively, yeah, they're good, but this isn't the 2018 defense by any stretch of the imagination. So, as these things go, yeah, that was, I feel like, about as accurate as you could have hoped for.
And I put this out on Twitter, and we had some people reply to it saying that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or clearly he didn't watch Mississippi State last year. I disagree with that.
In what way?
I think
in what way? I mean, everything.
Go ahead.
I don't get it. I don't get what people are disagreeing with.
That the offense
State would be better.
That they did figure out the drop 8.
Oh, I think that they did to an extent, but there were still times last year where Mississippi State struggled offensively. Where they weren't as efficient as they would like to be. Especially early in games. They were a team that consistently fell behind early in games, and in some games it cost them. It cost them falling behind to Memphis. It cost them falling behind to Arkansas. So yeah, I mean I feel pretty that was a pretty decent synopsis, actually.
Yeah, this is both teams in this state, SEC teams in this state, are so fascinating because I think this is a huge year for Mike Leach to show more consistency in the offense. See, a lot of people that I saw that didn't like this quote were like, well, he beat Kentucky, who was good, and he beat Texas A&M, who was good, and came back on Auburn. What are you talking about that he can't beat the drop 8? Well, even the NC State game, that was an objectively good, solid NC State team. People kind of dismiss that win. It was a really good win. But they beat NC State.
Best win.
They beat NC State on defense. They beat Kentucky largely on defense. They beat Texas A&M on defense. Now, that's part of the game. It doesn't matter if you win, but still.
They scored 24 on NC State. 7 of that was a kickoff return touchdown. They scored 26 on A&M. 2 of that was a safety, and they had an interception where they took over at the A&M 20 and got a field goal out of it. And then Kentucky. Now, Kentucky was a really good offensive game for Mississippi State. That's the game where Rogers was so efficient. He was 36 of 39.
Yeah. Also
the game where they ran the ball the most effectively all season. Kentucky was probably State's best performance top to bottom. I think their best win is NC State because that ended up being the best team that they beat last year. But, yeah, to act like Mississippi State was some sort of offensive juggernaut when, look at the Egg Bowl where they had 6 points with 8 minutes to go. Against Arkansas, they fall behind early in that game. Against Auburn, they were down 28-3. Yeah, they came back really strong, but obviously they struggled at points in that game.
Yeah.
And then, of course, against LSU, they fell behind. And they had a knack for it.
More consistency offensively is the key for State this year. I think that's absolutely fair to say. And if anybody took what I said as a slide, it's not. Zach Arnett's a good defense, one of the more underrated play callers probably in the conference. Really good. That's part of the game. And that is also a hire that Mike Leach made. But they've got to be more consistent offensively. On the flip side, here's what an anonymous SEC coach said about Ole Miss. When you lose the quarterback they had, it creates a question. But they have a quarterback coach and a play caller who is very creative and has throughout his coaching career done some really unorthodox things that fit the quarterback he has. He has always been able to put pressure on the defense, always.
Mm-hmm. Again, that feels like a very fair assessment. You know, when we've talked about it in the past, that you're going to give Lane Kiffin the benefit of the doubt offensively. I think that losing a quarterback of Matt Corral's caliber is probably worth 2 wins to Ole Miss. He was certainly worth 2 wins a season ago.
Yeah.
I'll give you 2 right off the top of my head: Arkansas and Tennessee. You don't win those games without Matt Corral. So if they take a step back to 8 wins, I mean that's you still haven't. You had 18 wins in 2 years, man. It was just 3 years ago you had 17 wins in 3 years.
Yeah.
So still doing good. That's a very fair assessment. I feel like the same thing we did with the Hunter Elliott thing. Like, where's the controversy?
Doesn't feel